There we go.
Recording in progress.
Yay. So, and I will keep, an eye on the people coming in and keep admitting people, so you don't have to worry about that, okay?
Okay.
Mm.
You just let us know when you're ready.
So why don't we go ahead and welcome everyone again to our second dialogue. And I am delighted to welcome our guest speakers or our speakers today, Nancy France and Shirley Gordon. And I will go ahead and spotlight them and put them on, and we can get started. So, spotlight for everyone. And Nancy, spotlight. There you go. Welcome.
Hey,
Thanks,
everybody.
Leslie. Well, I'm Nancy, and my co-host today is Shirley. We are truly partners in crime. And so, so welcome, Shirley, and thank you for joining me on this endeavor.
I'm thrilled to be here.
So this is a work in progress that we have the courage to share with you and invite your thoughts and reflections towards the end. Just a reminder that the dialogues, All Things Rogerian, is powered by the 2026 year of the Fire Horse, a dynamic time symbolizing energy, transformation, independence, and new beginnings, marked by powerful yang fire energy that fuels change. Expect a shift to a year of action, growth, and expanding horizons with an emphasis of nurturing relationships, turning ideas into reality, and embracing dramatic shifts. The first dialogue, The Pandimensional Truth in Nursing, focused on Malinsky's and Phillips' reminder that Rogers' principle of integrality and integral presence reveal more of the truth Rogers was seeking in nursing, and thus presents a deeper explanation of the meaning of presence and its process in the practice of nursing. This dialogue embraces how Rogerian science guides the nurse in living the meaning of presence and its process within professional nurse practice. In essence, the nurse as soul whisperer.
So we invite you to take a moment to focus on your breathing and be open to the possible alternating rhythms of language and meaning and a new becoming as we gently guide you through this dialogue. We encourage you to jot down any thoughts, feelings, ahas as well. So we're going to begin by exploring the following questions. What is the meaning of presence, of soul? How does understanding the nurse as soul whisperer address concerns in day-to-day practice without increasing burden on nurses? Whenever there is talk about changing practice, nurses will say, I don't have time for this. When we're talking about burden today, it's not just time, but emotional, physical, spiritual, and political. In other words, burden is pandimensional. The goal of practicing nursing as soul whisperer is not directed toward burden, but on the wholeness of practice. The cost on the soul of the nurse is too great to not practice nursing more fully from Rogers' science. Therefore, practicing nursing more fully from Rogers' science alleviates burden.
Phillips states, in Rogerian science, the human and environment is in pandimensional mutual process known as integral presence, a perceiving, experiencing of the integrality of humans and the environment. Integral presence is relative and infinite, occurring anywhere in the universe and does not have to be in close proximity of a person. So, for example, the nurse as practitioner of therapeutic touch, healing touch, and Reiki. Integral presence is a living process, not requiring our five senses or logical reasoning. Through and within integral presence emerges the patterns of knowing that create unitary pan-dimensional knowledge and insight of Rogers' science. Patterns of knowing emerge through and within the nurse's pan-dimensional awareness of and integral presence with the person-environment energy field, creating knowledge to guide the practice of nursing and nurse as soul whisperer. In 2015, John Phillips stated that we frequently hear the word soul. We speak of the soul of the universe and nursing, and even Rogers as the soul of nursing. Changes in one's soul are integral to all changes in people's pattern and its manifestations. A changing soul of people and the universe calls for nurses and others to help them participate knowingly in mutual integral presence in manifesting the well-becoming. Phillips expands on knowing and understanding further. He says, person, group, environment is an energy spirit field that manifests a soul. And he says, the Society of Rogerian Scholars is an energy spirit field that manifests a soul.
In 2024, Nancy and I further explored and defined nurse as soul whisperer in our book, Co-Creating a Holistic Healing Environment in Nursing Practice. Within our framework, we define nurse as co-creator of healing and peace, helping persons to find meaning in the living experience and well-becoming as soul whisperer and healer. We defined healing as a personal experience of transcending suffering, a pan-dimensional, non-linear, emergent mutual process of the integrality of one's heart, mind, body, soul, and environment. Nurse's soul whisperer is intricately present and in compassionate unity with other to ease and transcend suffering. Nurse interconnects with a person or group soul to soul through pan-dimensional thoughts such as soothing, tender, quieting, and loving, giving illumination and radiance. And then we added to transcend suffering. Within compassionate unity, nurse is soul whisperer and healer. For us, compassionate unity emerges within integral presence and is the alternating rhythms of perceiving, experiencing, I feel you feel me, and I feel you feeling me, which is the interwoven energy field, nurse and simultaneously the healer and healee, both healing and being healed. Compassionate unity emerges within integral presence, alternating rhythms of perceiving, experiencing, soul to soul, interwoven nurse person and nurse group energy spirit fields.
In the first dialogue, The Pan-Dimensional Truth of Nursing, we showed how Rogers' science guided the power of nursing. The power of nursing is the freedom to practice nursing grounded in our pan-dimensional awareness of the alternating rhythms of language and meaning. Now, using that power, let's explore how Rogers' science guides the practice of nursing. Nurses will say, I don't have time for this, too much to do. And there's the perception that others control nursing practice. How do we knowingly participate in changing this? How does understanding the nurse as soul whisperer address these concerns? Well, there needs to be a reframing. A reframing is guided by Rogers and theories of nursing. We must be openness, pan-dimensionally aware of the person-environment field, flexible, not rigid, or insisting on the purity of Rogerian science language, because we must speak a shared language. The nurse is multilingual in terms of disciplinary languages. We speak the language of medicine, respiratory therapy, physical therapy, healthcare ease. In addition, the nurse is speaking and understanding the language of the patient. In practice, the nurse must learn the techniques of grounding and centering self, first becoming authentically present, asking the question, Who do I choose to bring to practice? With this intention, the nurse becomes pan-dimensionally aware of the soul-to-soul mutual process of the person-environment energy field, the alternating patterns, and the emergent patterns of knowing. The nurse understands the person-environment energy field is always changing in diversity and innovative wave frequency, rhythms, experiencing the vicissitudes of one's rhythms of life. Within the emergency department, for example, the person-environment energy field is a group energy field integral with its own environmental field, changing in diversity and innovative wave frequency rhythms, experiencing the vicissitudes of one's rhythms of life. And I believe those are some of John's words. Nurses are already practicing from a unitary perspective. Rogerscience provides the language and theoretical connections for a deeper understanding and the ability to deeply articulate nursing both within and outside the discipline.
So to provide an example of how we can look for these practices, we're going to share some ideas and some stills from the television series, The Pit. Some of you may already be watching this, and if you haven't, it is an interesting show to watch. The Pit is an American procedural medical drama television series created by R. Scott Jamel and executive produced by John Wells and Noah Wiley. Each season of the series follows the emergency department staff as they attempt to overcome the hardships of a single 15-hour work shift at the fictional Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Center, nicknamed The Pit, all while having to navigate staff shortages, underfunding, and their own personal crises. I'm sure many of you can relate to some of those challenges. Each episode, set in real time, covers approximately 1 hour of the work shift. Through the lens of Rogerscience, we invite you to focus on the day-to-day practice of Dana, who is the charge nurse in the series. We're going to look at the charge nurse Dana as Soul Whisperer.
As charge nurse Dana walks into the hospital, she grounds, centers, becoming authentically present as she sets her intention, who do I choose to bring to practice today? As she enters, she takes another deep breath, becoming intricately present and pan-dimensionally aware of the soul-to-soul mutual process of the emergency department person-environment energy field as a group energy field, and the emergent patterns of knowing, guiding her knowing, doing, becoming, or her practice.
Charge nurse Dana is integrally present and pan-dimensionally aware of the soul-to-soul mutual process of the emergency department, which is the person-environment energy field as a group energy field, and the emergent patterns of knowing, guiding her knowing, doing, becoming, her practice. When integrally present, Dana is pan-dimensionally aware of the patterns of knowing that are emerging within the person group environment energy field. And here you see her staring at the screen that shows all the patients that are waiting to be seen. This awareness brings attention to what is not there or not being observed or experienced versus what is there and readily observable. Through pan-dimensional awareness, Dana can see gaps, experience the alternating rhythms, and in mutual process, knows the questions to ask.
But as we know, shifts in the alternating rhythms can shift our knowing participation and therefore our integral presence. These shifts can swirl our knowing participation from integral presence to unknowing participation.
When we are no longer authentically present, we are in unknowing participation. And even though we are still in mutual process, this unknowing participation interferes with healing of self and other in the person-environment energy field. The nurse needs to care for self by stepping away, going to the bathroom, getting fresh air, crying, then ground, center, to become authentically present and in pan-dimensional awareness, to knowing participate in the person energy field, the person and the person group environment energy field. Knowing participation in integral presence is caring that is grounded and explained within the science of unitary human beings.
When integrally present, Dana interconnects with persons soul to soul through pan-dimensional thoughts such as soothing, tender, quieting, and loving, giving illumination and radiance, as Phillips has told us, but also to transcend suffering. Dana is soul whisperer. Compassionate unity, even in the emergency department, emerges within integral presence and is the alternating rhythms of perceiving and experiencing. I feel you feel me, and I feel you feeling me. The interwoven energy field nurse and simultaneously the healer and healee, both healing and being healed. Here, Dana is in compassionate unity with the patient, Digby. We can see how Nurse Dana is integrally present and knowingly participating within the person group environment field, how she is experiencing alternating rhythms.
All right, so accepting that this is not a linear process, that practice is not a linear process, what would practice look like if all nurses were practicing as soul whisperers?
Thank you for coming today, but we're going to put it back to the slide with the question on it again. So we now invite your thoughts and ideas and discussion. Maybe I should put that in the chat so people can read it, so we can turn off the.
Yeah, we can go back to the galley view.
Let's see. Stop sharing that, and I'll get the words, and I'll put it in our chat. And chat.
We also invite you to post questions or thoughts in the chat as well if you're not comfortable sharing them on the recording.
Can I start?
Sure.
Hi, everyone. I think I know everyone. Mary, have you and I met? I don't think so. Anyway, I'm Wyona. I'm an Icelandic Canadian person, so I'm one of those ones people kind of, well, what? I worked in emergency in Canada and in the United States. So I was blessed to be in very busy emergency departments. In Canada, we would have as many as 200 patients through in an 8-hour evening shift, and there was only 7 of us. But that soul to soul, keep getting a spam that's really bad. I've got to keep my phone on. My mom is phoning. She's she's older and has dementia periods. I can remember being able to feel that pattern, not only with who I was with, but beyond. So you knew you had to go, okay, I'm going to be back in a minute. And then you ran like heck because you could feel something happening beyond that was really important that you be at it. All right. I can remember one time we probably had 50 patients in the ER. It was, we had RCMP everywhere, with the prisoners and things that they had brought in. And I remember just hearing this little tiny cry, but it sounded like a cat. And I went, oh my God, I've got a head injury. I've got a head injury in here. And I could just, I'm feeling this head injury and I'm looking everywhere. And I found a little 7-year-old girl. And we had to, immediately get her airlifted, over to the pediatric neuro ICU where she needed to go. But I mean, because you're so open to the patterns, um, I don't, I'm a nurse of touch. I hate that we've lost the pulse. People take it on a mechanical machine now. I think that was such an important feeling, this touch, and I always do it anyway. And even if I work today, I would, because I think it's just a gentle touch that we can help connect through that as well as our voices. But I watched the whole pit. I almost want to watch it a second time because I agree with you. That head nurse was amazing. And you really chose a wonderful story to make Soul Whispers what you did. And oh, and 50 years from now, can we all be soul whisperers? Can we do it in 25? That's what I envision in the future is, I don't know. I just want to get there.
Thank you, Wyona. Yeah.
And I think most of us can share moments when we were soul whisperers and that we were aware of that. And so what would practice look like if we were practicing from that perspective all the time? And of course, with alternating rhythms, sometimes you're integrally present, sometimes you're in compassionate unity, sometimes you're in compassionate unity with an individual, and sometimes you're in compassionate unity with a group. So it's not a constant state, but it's important to have that pan-dimensional awareness.
I think the beauty of using Dana, the charge nurse, as our exemplar, and if you are watching, is to see that pan-dimensional awareness, all the alternating rhythms, and she may flip out and be an unknowing, well, we say unknowing participation, but it's really still knowing participation to get somebody put in their place, like when she literally saved the new nurse who was being accosted, but she's always aware. And like you said, Wyland, it's there. It's there. You turn because it's there to find it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I reflect on, Roger saying the soul of nursing, it is soul to soul. And I look at the ER, there's so many, you got the one big group environment energy field, but you've got probably 10 trauma rooms that each have group and a group energy field. You've got the triage area that has group energy field. You've got the waiting room. But here you've got a nurse who is so integral and pan-dimensionally aware. And at times when not, it comes back down to knowing how to take care of yourself so you can continue to be that way.
Yeah, Nancy, we have several hands up. I think Dot was first.
Okay.
Hi, Dot.
Hi there. Hi, Shirley. Hi, Nancy. Hi,
Yeah.
Leslie. Hi, everybody. Just put you all together there. Thank you for this topic, and I have to unpack it from a Rogerian languaging myself, and I kept wondering how the new nurse with his or her fear, anxieties, wanting to get it right, want to be compassionate, but all these demands are on them, how to support that person. And my background, I was a pediatric nurse and I got hired in various ERs because of my pediatric experience. And then when I watch the pit, I'm right back there. I'm I'm working the shift with them. And I was the charge nurse, day charge nurse at the Boca Raton ER before it became Boca Raton Regional, and before I went to my doctoral studies. And I relate so much to Dana. I did have a lot of experience under my belt. I wasn't a new nurse, so that was helpful to me. But when you frame the question that's in the chat, I'm wondering about is there a way to help a new nurse become a soul whisperer by learning or being aware of quieting our ego? I think the ego gets built up and then you can't see the forest from the trees. So I just put that out there because that's where I kind of landed after your talk today. So thanks so much. I got a lot of thinking to do. Appreciate it.
Well, that's a great question, Dot. And while Nancy and I were developing the framework that's in the book, we shared it with a group of senior nursing students at FAU. And they were very engaging, and surprisingly, they, well, not surprisingly, based on their educational curricula, but they understood what we were saying. And their biggest question was, how do we stay focused and aware when there's so much chaos going on around us? And so we've been thinking about that. How do we help not only new nurses and student nurses, but how do we help all nurses maintain that sense of presence and pandential awareness in the midst of a lot of chaotic events?
That's exactly what Martha, John, and Violet have been talking about.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
integrality, integral presence. But I can't really see everybody's hands. I see Mary's, and
I think Mary's hand up was
Oh.
next.
Okay.
Mary,
Can't
you're on
hear
mute.
you though. Okay, here it comes. It is Mary.
I appreciate both of your presentations, and I would say I hadn't thought about what Dot was saying, but I can share a moment, Dot, because I was a PICU nurse, I was a NICU nurse. I took care of when I was in the Navy, I took care of post-Vietnamese survivors, and in all of those chaotic situations, what I would say is important from your aspect, both of your presentations, is we are all soul whisperers. It's how we're exposed in our environments. I remember as a new nurse, a brand new graduate in Peds ICU, I would walk in there, and they used to have this rule at the University Hospital that you couldn't be in charge unless you had your baccalaureate degree. So I came my first night, and who was on but the associate degree nurse who had 25 years experience in Peds ICU, myself, and one other baccalaureate grad. And so the head nurse, who wasn't there, decided I was going to be in charge that night. So what I did is I tapped into my soul whispering, and I said to Susie Sullivan Boyer, who some people may know now, she works at Yale. I said, Susie, it's obvious who has the experience here from a technological point of view, but I can tell you that I'd like you to respect what I have. And I have an innate ability to read into energy. And I have a feeling tonight this is going to be an interesting night because we'd had two new open hearts, as we called them back then. And I said, those are not going to be our problem. It's going to be the kid over in this bed. And she looked at me and she said, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, by 2 o'clock in the morning, she knew what I was talking about. Okay. So I would not underestimate any new grad. I think there are just as many 25-year grads that don't know what they're doing and not tapping into their soul whispering. So I would say if we had all nurses really trust that they are soul whisperers, our environments would look different. And I would say the moment that charge nurse in the pit was not a soul whisperer, she walked outside to smoke a cigarette and got punched out. She was not in herself, right? And I think that's the thing that bothers me about the pit is why is that nurse smoking? But but furthermore, I think that we really even in that serial, the important person that's always portrayed as the doctor, when you watch her and she's the key maneuverer of the ER because she's moving those patients in and out. And it's what you say, Nancy, we're losing our voice. And why are we losing it? Because we're not demonstrating who we are.
And Mary, I think that's one of the values of practicing from a theoretical framework. It gives us the language and the connections to share with others.
Mhm.
That helps with our not only a fuller understanding of nursing for ourselves, but helps us share that within and without the discipline.
Well, also too, and I'll hop over to Violet, but also like you gave the example, Mary, of, the nurse said, I don't know what you're talking about. And you said, well, this is what I know. You framed the language for her.
Yes.
And so that's what we mean by multilingual. I mean, so many people say, Rogers, you gotta be kidding me. I don't get the words. I don't, it's like, it's so, of course, I would say it's so simple. But when we reframe it, they're like, oh, that's what you mean. So anyway, Violet.
And that's what Martha does for us, is she helps us frame this. I mean, I identified very early with Martha, even though she had these abstract terms, I knew I was an energy person, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I think both of you, and certainly Wyona also, definitely were talking about the principle of integrality and a beautiful illustration of integrality and the manifestation of energy spirit. And I think in an ideal world, in terms of nursing education, from day one, nursing students would be exposed to Rogerian nursing science, but through the experiential frameworks of meditation, imagery, therapeutic touch, other energy modalities, because that really is the experiential component that will bring to life the meaning of the words and what Martha has been talking about. And I think that's really what needs to happen. And then every nurse would recognize what she or he knows, what she or he is capable of, what she or he, the difference that they can make in the healthcare arena, and they will not allow their voices to be silenced.
Yeah, you challenge us to completely rethink fundamentals of nursing classes, right? What are the fundamentals of nursing? And that's what
Exactly.
you're talking
But
about.
this isn't a linear thing. We don't start with education. I mean, we have to infiltrate education and practice and our nursing organizations and everything too. It's not step one, step two, but I think Rory had her hand up next. Hey, Rory.
Mute myself. Hi there. It's really nice to see everybody. And what a beautiful, beautiful presentation you both put together. It's so impressive and so moving to me. At any rate, a word that I haven't heard you mention, and maybe you did and I missed it, is intuition. And how does intuition fit into Rogerian framework, into what you're talking about? Because I can, it's interesting how many of us are older, but we're relating back to um, when we were brand new nurses, and I was a brand new psych nurse, and I did things that I thought worked, and I couldn't figure out why in terms of theoretical frameworks or whatever, but I was able to be successful as a very brand new nurse, even with very psychotic and dangerous patients. And I always thought, well, that's intuition. And that's also the fact that I care about a person that I'm trying to deal with who may be, on the verge of violence or whatever. So where does intuition fit into this, or does it?
It
And
does. It does.
okay, could you talk some more about that?
Well, intuition is a pattern of knowing, and we know that the patterns of knowing, help us. It's with unitary knowledge. And so it helps us to build and increase our knowledge. And stay tuned because dialogue 3 is behold pattern. And that's when we get more into the patterns of knowing. But intuition is a pattern of knowing, and very we didn't point out the specific patterns of knowing when we did this thing with the pit, but we've certainly seen it. So it is a pattern of knowing that as a soul whisperer, we know that we have that. Shirley, do you want to add something to that?
Well, I was going to say, as I was listening to what Mary said about she knew a particular child was going to have some changes, you could describe that as tuition. She described it as, reading energy, but I think those are combined. I think they're integral. We use all that we have. We bring all that we are to nursing, right? So, yes. So, Winona, you had your hand up.
Again, I know I don't want to dominate the conversation. I do want to say that what I did when I was with the undergrad students, I had them in clinical, and I would always insist we come together for an hour every week. And they did, they came. And the way I explained energy, and I didn't even know about Rogers, was the light bulb, and I'd say, have you ever, felt the energy, the light, an old light bulb and how it has heat, and then you turn it off and you still feel it a little bit? Oh yeah, everybody could. And what's a normal, ask, well, what's a normal temperature for an adult? And they'll all give me these ranges of the normal temperature. I said, great. Now, help me understand that we're sitting in a room that's about 72 degrees. And why is it that we couldn't radiate? And they got it. They got the radiation. They got this idea. That's all it took. And I had like 5 principles, Freistingson's rules. And one of them was trust your gut. Trust your gut. And so what I would say to them is that first 2-3 days of your clinical, just learn that foundation, learn the medicine, learn the unit, learn how the blood pressure works, but all the machines are different. Get a handle on what's solid the first 2 to 3 days. Ask a lot of questions of your preceptor. Ask everything, because that's a good thing to do. And then I want you to start reading the energy, and you read the energy as you enter the room, because that is how we develop trust, is we understand that energy immediately upon walking in the room. Even if someone's got their face turned away from us, you can feel it. And they got it. The students got it. We would have days, we'd talk about this on the remaining 10 clinical weeks or whatever it was. And, I wasn't talking Roger's language because I didn't know the theory. I didn't know the theory until I read the book, and then I went, oh my God, I've been talking Rogers all along. Unfortunately, I'm dyslexic, so I can't say the words. Heliancy I can say, but the other ones I can't say. So that's a problem. I mean, what do you do for those of us that are dyslexic and we can't get a handle on those words?
You have to reframe them,
Yeah, I have to reframe them. I have to,
That's
because
okay.
patterning, I have to call it, I understand, but I simply can't say those words. It took me forever to say spaghetti. I mean, I was like 14 before I could say. Linoleum was another one. So, it's hard for me. And I'm old now, so I forget.
You're older. You're older.
Older.
You're not old.
Older, right.
But Rory, did we answer your question? I just wanted to touch back to Rory to see if we answered her question.
Yes, of course you did. You always do. So you guys always do. So no, thank you, Nancy, for going back. That's very sweet of you. I appreciate it.
And I think Sharon was waving.
Yeah.
Were you waving to have your hand up, Sharon?
Oh, well, I guess I would just like to reinforce what Violet said about, and I think it just came up in the last discussion about, and rethinking fundamentals to really begin to help people to understand their soul and who they are, because the word awareness, awareness, awareness keeps coming up. And I'm going to be, it's a little risky for me, but most of you talk about how aware you were of your abilities when you were young. I was not. I was real smart and I knew what to do and I knew all these things, but I have an experience where I was smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee and I have an experience where I distinctly remember I heard myself say to myself, knock, knock, knock. Are you paying attention to what you're doing? And, you know, I think there are a lot of people like it wasn't a lot of people like me who maybe have were operating at different levels at the same time, but the intellectual level was not aware of that deeper level. And that really didn't open up for me until I was asked to go by someone else who recognized that I needed some help to a guided imagery session where I met a part of myself that I was so buried, I didn't even know I had that part. So I think there are probably a lot more people like me. And I would just say to Joyce Perkins, I think one of the reasons I'm so fascinated with your program is what you talk about that you do in terms of helping students to early, and you said this, Violet, learn very early that they have a capacity that they may not be aware of and that can develop throughout their whole life. And I know for me, I couldn't do it myself. I had to have people around me who could see when I was getting pulled off of my center. Once I understood I had a center. So I'll just put that out there.
Sharon, I think we all need people around us to help us. I mean, we can all be grounded and centered and get knocked off of that center.
Mhm.
You know, just like Dana in the pit. There have been times when she got knocked off her center, but had to find her way back to that. So we all need people around us. It's relationship. I mean,
And a lot of times Dana was helping others find their center.
mhm.
So yeah, it's, it isn't a static linear thing. Thank you for sharing that, Sharon. Other thoughts? Hey, Joyce.
Violet, I'm very intrigued by your idea of how we begin with students, because when I was still in my faculty role, I connected with some of the Australian nurses, and they were starting by introducing nursing as a play. And they would cast students into different roles in the play and have them act it out. And they would all say, "Oh, we don't know how to do that because we're not nurses yet." And as they were introduced to what is a nurse, right, rather than what is medicine and what does medicine do, or this linear way that we seem to teach students, like have to have your fundamentals down before you come to this and stack it up. They were really acting it out. And I was very intrigued, and I asked to see some of their plays, and I thought, what would that look like if we educated nurses about what is nursing? What if we educated nurses in Rogerian science?
Well, Martha was very clear on nurse and nursing, And one of my favorite things I love to tell people I work with, other nurses or whatever, a non-nurse cannot tell a nurse how to practice.
Right.
And so, and for some people, it's like surprising, but again, it's that awareness, going back to that understanding presence and the meaning of presence and, you know, how integrality,
Mhm.
like Violet was saying.
Elaine has her hand up.
Hi,
Hi.
hi everyone. I'm new to this group. I'm just fascinated by the topic, and thank you for doing this. My question is, do you think that the stigma of this awareness and tapping into it and acceptance of it and making it part of your core as an or opening up to that part of yourself as a nurse is less now than it was. I became a nurse in 74. And if you weren't top notch in what is not nursing, what is medicine, if you weren't top notch, then there was a stigma to that. And everything attached to your value was how well you could carry out those orders and how well you could function within that medical model. And I've straddled the medical model my whole life. I became a nurse practitioner at 81. And so I've struggled my entire career in being a nurse who practices in a medical world. And I felt stigma and I felt pressure to not express really some of my observations or some of my suggestions and practice quietly those aspects until very recently. I think becoming a Reiki master really and delving into studying the science from different aspects, not just within the Rogerian framework. And I wonder if others have thoughts about the stigma of other professionals. I don't mean of our patients, of the people we're in relation with. I don't mean that. I mean others in health professions, in healing professions.
I always felt like that people did not want us to discover our power because then they knew how powerful we would be. You know, so I think that that's a lot of it right there, not supporting one another and using that term stigma, but I at times felt squelched. I guess that's yeah,
Maybe that's more appropriate than stigma,
yeah,
suppressed,
yeah,
um, suppressed than having just don't talk about that. That's not important. Did you
yeah,
get that temp? Did you do that blood gas? That's important.
yeah, yeah,
That's the important thing.
yeah.
Right. And we argue that the cost to the nurse's soul in squelching nursing like that is too great.
Mhm.
You know, and that's again one of the values of having a theoretical framework like Rogers to guide our practice. It gives us a little more um, grounding to share some of our thoughts and ideas. And Don Hawthorne and I wrote an article a while back on the invisibility of spiritual care practices in nursing. And again, that's the same kind of thing. While we believe that as a nurse, we are concerned with the soul and the spirit just as we are concerned with the physical body, but those practices are invisible. They're there. And when you call them out and say these are spiritual practices, um, people go, yes, of course they are, but they're hidden. They're not captured in the electronic health record. They're hidden. So we have a lot of work to do.
Well, that's one of the things that I need to quit talking, let other people talk. Wait, why am I talking? But
Yes.
that's one of the other good things about the pit because they
Mhm.
made it pretty clear in several episodes. The residents and the med students talking to each other. You listen to the nurses because they know what's going on. If they tell you something, you listen to what they're telling you. So it's using media in a way for nurses to say, that's right, and they have the courage, but also that's the sociopolitical stance of it all, where we can find our courage. But going back to grounding and having Roger's science guide what we do and how we do. I think Dot has her hand up again. Is there
Yeah.
somebody else? Not again, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sound like that, but
Dot again? Yes, again. It's part, well, to follow up what you just said, Nancy, about, the nurses, follow the nurses, for the residents and the docs, they know what's going on. I had it, Ian, trying to think of Ian's last name now, Goldstein. He had introduced me to his wife at some kind of party and said, Dot is the nurse that makes my job easier. And I was like taken aback by that. So that's reminded me of that situation there. So thank you for that benevolent memory that I have now. But what I wanted to say with integral presence, um, we talk about, a lot of people know I'm studying compassion and digging into that, as we know nurses are compassionate and want to practice compassionately and have compassion in our ethics, for ethical, the code of ethics for nursing. So speaking, that's why that's of interest to me. And to have that integral presence, the authentic presence, and know that compassion sometimes is hard. It's not all soft, lovey-dovey stuff. People think, oh, compassion, you're patting somebody on the head or the hand, getting them ice chips, you're helping the family out, which is all kind things. But to really have that fierce compassion where you know where you can have your limits and your boundaries, where you may have to step out and take care of yourself, ground yourself, and then you can re-enter, or other techniques and things like that. And I really think it should start in fundamentals with the students, so they don't um, compartmentalize, which is probably how we're not all of us are teaching that way, but some of the courses, okay, wait till you get to pathophysiology and wait till you get to anatomy and wait till you get to your specialties, ICU, and they don't want to do community. No, I shouldn't say that. Some probably want to do community in public health, but they all want to be ICU and ER nurses type of thing, especially with the pit being there. So just understanding that fierce compassion piece, that there's a boundary around you and you need to speak for yourself. And I think that has to do a little bit with what I mentioned earlier about quieting the ego, in terms of so that you don't um, react. To take that pause, learn how to self-center yourself so you can um, uh, relate opposed to reacting.
We might also include that kind of content in orientation at new hospital. When a person comes into a hospital, have that as part of the orientation. That is an expectation in this culture that you as nurse care for someone, and that is an expectation. And that is supported then within the cultures. And we saw that, in the pit. There were several times when Dana told another or invited another staff member to take a break. Sometimes very forcibly, take a break. You need a break. So yeah. So again, because I agree with Nancy, it can't all just be the new nurses, because we have a lot of nurses and a lot of nursing cultures out there right now that could benefit from that. So Karen, I saw you had your hand up a while back.
Yeah. Just thinking, of course, many of us, as I can see our faces, have many years of experience in nursing and all the different things that we've been through, right? So learning therapeutic touch in the 70s in nursing school and then going out into practice was a reality check for me because I expected to be able to, integrate those things into basic care and comfort for patients and other nurses or your preceptors. What are you doing? So um, and as a young nurse, you are timid and you haven't found your voice, right? So we're not necessarily teaching our nursing students to find their voice with other disciplines. I think we are teaching them to be more follow the orders, do those kind of subservient roles, and even trying to integrate self-development throughout the curriculum in a bachelor's program for nurses. And at the end, of course, they understand self-care and they understand, caring for themselves in that way, but they're still not uh, able to be true advocates, I think, for nursing practice. And so I think that was always the hardest thing was to try to, you know, have you encourage them and give them the strength to be able to speak what they believe when they are out there in practice.
Mhm. Mhm. I can remember sharing with my students that when they were looking at the physician orders, that those were orders for the patient. Those weren't nursing orders. Those were patient orders. So nursing practice, incorporates helping patients
Follow those.
with those orders, but that doesn't define our practice.
Yeah, I used to tell the students, olden days, they used to call them the doctor's orders, medical orders, but actually what it is the receipt for charging patients healthcare while they're in the hospital, so that if they see there's a Tylenol, they know the nurse, who's a room and bed and board and bed fee person, she doesn't get paid an hourly amount per patient.
Mhm.
They have to then go to the med room and get one of those $15 little plastic cups to use once to put that one Tylenol or two Tylenol in the cup to give it to the patient. And that's what medical orders are, so they could charge the patient.
Mm-hmm.
It's the truth.
And why does it cost $15? Because it includes the
That was the
nursing.
last hospital I worked at. I found out the charge list on equipment.
Well, it covers the cost of nursing too.
Yeah, yeah.
The medication administration charge, but they don't charge medication administration. They
No.
charge for the cup and the pill.
Yeah, they
Because
nickel
again,
and dime it. Yeah.
nursing's invisible in the bill.
Yeah, we're room and board. So if the patient pays $333 a day for inpatient, that's where the nurse's pay comes from. And then whatever you're ordering, um, that's how that bill comes about.
One of the things that I think I've started paying more attention to recently, I had some surgery done back in December. Nothing life-shattering or anything. But as I watched my pre-op nurse and the RN circulator and then the post-op nurse, I thought, they know Martha Rogers. I mean, it was just, and sometimes, of course, I let everybody know I'm a nurse. I just shout it from the rooftops, I'm a nurse. But anyway, the pre-op nurse was always, I mean, we were intricately present in the way we could talk and how she could still do her tasks. But when we were just kind of waiting, when she was done and was waiting for everybody else to come, she said, now we're going to calm this environment because it is crazy out there, but we're going to calm it in here. And so she dimmed the lights. Well, the nurse anesthetist came in and said, "Why are the lights dim?" And I said, "Well, because Hyler said it's time to have a calm environment." And she went, "Okay, okay." And she lowered her voice and she was talking softly. So I thought, see, there's something here, you know. Here's a nurse who understands the person environment and the energy and trying to get her patient calm and ready, you know, for the OR. So I've just I like to watch nurses because you can say to them, instead of saying, "Today I'm going to teach you how to practice using Rogers science," you watch them and you say, "Do you realize you're practicing by Rogers science?" It just has a whole nother and it's just a whole nother dimension for them, I think. But that's I enjoy watching nurses and then telling them that you got this, you know this. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience. But anyway. So my nurse was a soul whisperer, the perioperative nurse. Yeah. So. So where do we go from here? Yeah.
I
go
think
ahead.
Carly had her hand up.
Oh, Carly. Oh.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up one thought. Like you said, the doctor or the anesthesiologist came in and said, "Why are the lights off?" and all of this stuff. So I was thinking about many years ago, which you're all going to laugh at me for saying that, but I became a nurse. And maybe like a year or two in, I was on a surgical unit and it was just chaos. All the patients were just miserable, like one of those days. And I was just sitting there very young and said, "I wish I could just go around to each patient and give them a hug." Like it just came out in the nurse's station. And a doctor turned around and said, "You do not belong here." So I feel like when are we going to get the respect from other professions about the way that we practice nursing? Because clearly I did not have the language that I have had the pleasure of learning now. But really, I wanted to say, like, all these patients just need our presence and our time. Um, and also, I wasn't really exposed to that in nursing school and as a young nurse, so I didn't have the confidence to stand up and say, "No, our patients need this."
No
Like,
caller.
so, so I do agree with everybody saying that this should be taught and they should be exposed to this early on. And I love also the idea of that Shirley had that in orientation, the nurses should have that support there too. But even with continuing education to reach more nurses, you know, that have been in the field for 25 years and don't have the language or maybe even the knowledge or the awareness that they're practicing like this, but they need to support their other nurses in practicing in this way as well. So, yeah, I hope one day we can get together with more, you know, interprofessionally so they can see the value in the nursing side of things.
And helping our nurses to know to speak up, helping them with the courage and the confidence to speak up. I think maybe we need to have some sort of a continuing education thing called Nurses Soul Whisperer, because I think everybody would sign up because they know they have it.
You know, Carly, I was wondering what would he have done if you'd have just hugged him?
Yeah.
Oh, you need a hug.
I wish I would have done that. But instead, it made me feel like, you know what? I don't feel like I belong here if nobody else, you know, thinks the same as me, you know? So But lessons learned, and I went on, and got to a different unit and spoke about holistic nursing. Other nurses, oh, I'm not a holistic nurse, but I'm like, I see you doing this, this, and this, and that is showing that you are practicing holistically. So I think it's the word holistic with some is still like taboo and like woo woo, and but they just don't understand.
Yeah. Well, I didn't fit in anywhere, Carly, I'll tell you that. I was always the person. So I always had trouble fitting in because I was always the person with two heads. Like, where did you hear that? What's wrong with you? But anyway. Any other last minute things? I know that Leslie's looking at her time. Yeah.
Megan has her hand up.
Oh, please. Sorry, we didn't see that. Thanks, Violet.
Thank you. This was a great. I mean, I love where you women are going with this idea and incorporate. It was wonderful. One of my favorite sentences was that nursing grounded in pan-dimensional awareness of the alternating rhythms of language and meaning. Now, that's very destabilizing. So we have to get people comfortable with being destabilized, with being comfortable with holding paradox, that I can come in with my own expanded pan-dimensional consciousness and contract into tasks. And they're not mutually exclusive. And I know I'm overstating the obvious, but I echo the foundational, which is beyond the notion of teaching self-care, self-awareness, presence, is really back to that, what is your ontology? How do you what is your episteme? How do you understand the world? How do you perceive the world? How do you make sense out of the world? Who are you? How do you perceive? What is intuition? So that deep immersion and that kind of experiential learning, which is destabilizing because because of the nature that it's in such conflict with the paradigm that we are all in. And I think that's scary territory for a lot of academics, and and you have to be very courageous to introduce that. And I think this, to access a pan-dimensional awareness, right? The pan-dimensional field, it's a phenomenological process. We don't know. You enter the unknown, and that still hasn't really found its way into too many, systems of learning and systems and cultures of practice. So, and we all try to find our way to convey it a little bit in the little forms that we do. And so I love what you're bringing forth, Shirley and Nancy, that that we are speaking to another dimension of consciousness. And so I return to how. And how do we integrate that? How do we access that? How do we develop that? How do we help in this idea of becoming, you know, of a world that makes the pan-dimensional less invisible and less subtle. So, but I'm okay with invisibility. I know it's powerful, so I'm okay with that. But anyway, thank you. Thank you very much for the conversation and the dialogue, and it's wonderful. Thank you.
I think that this all has to start with the Rogerian scholars. Right here. The power of Rogerian scholars. And we're getting to that too in the rest of the dialogues, but anyway, so.
So what is the next dialogue, Nancy?
The next dialogue is co-hosted with Dr. Karen Avito and myself, and the next dialogue is Behold Pattern. Again, we've chosen Martha's words and John's words. These words are powerful. And so, yeah, Behold Pattern.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time. And I believe the next dialogue is June 16th, I think 2 months from now. And I will be posting the notice and sending out notices to everybody. So you'll know about it way in advance. But I'm
Thanks,
going to,
everybody. Yeah.
yep, this has been great. Thank you so much, Nancy and Shirley, and everyone who's been here today to participate. And it was wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
to
you,
everyone.
everybody. Good to see you all. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.